director just said that John Kasich was the only one who could beat Donald Trump in Ohio. Should Marco Rubio supporters in Ohio vote for John Kasich?
Yeah, if a voter in Ohio is motivated by stopping Donald Trump and comes to the conclusion that John Kasich is the only one who can beat him there, then I expect that's the decision they'll make. I can tell you that in Florida, I'm the only one that can beat Donald Trump. And whether someone supports Ted Cruz or John Kasich, if you vote for them in Florida, you're in essence voting for Donald Trump. And if a voter reaches the same conclusion in Ohio, then I think that's what they're going to do as well.
So are you joining forces with John Kasich?
I've never talked to John Kasich about this. You asked me a question, I'm giving you my observation. Clearly, John Kasich has a better chance of winning Ohio than I do. And if a voter in Ohio concludes that voting for John Kasich gives us the best chance to stop Donald Trump there, I anticipate that's what they'll do.
Senator, regarding the Israel position, Jewish people mostly vote Democrat. How do you put, and the Democratic opponent, likely Hillary Clinton in November, is going to preach this same message. Is there daylight? How do you put daylight between your Israel position and Mrs. Clinton?
Well, first of all, for me, this is not about simply just voters and elections. It's about the right thing to do for our country. This, as I've said to you during the moments when I was speaking, the U.S.-Israeli relationship is about a lot more than just domestic politics in America. It's about the national security of the United States. Israel is the only pro-American, free enterprise democracy in the Middle East. And I would just observe to you that when Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State, she was involved in efforts to pressure Israel to the negotiating table. And in fact, emails now suggest that members of her staff had told her that perhaps the U.S. should undertake a covert program to stir up protests in the Judea-Samaria region in order to force Israel further to the table. So I can just tell you that she'll have to answer for being the chief architect of a foreign policy over her 4 years as Secretary of State, in which the Obama administration bought into this notion that the reason why we had bad relationships in the Islamic world is because we were too close to Israel. And if we could just create some separation from Israel, that it would somehow make us more popular in the Islamic world. That is something apparently Secretary Clinton bought into. She'll have to answer for that when she's a candidate for president.
Senator, any thoughts on
Hold on, I'm sorry, I'll get to you now in a second.
Senator Rubio, mathematically, it is going to be tough for anybody to overtake Donald Trump in the delegate count. I'm sure you've heard there is talk about maybe you and Ted Cruz joining forces somehow in order to stop him. Has anybody approached you about that? Have you talked to Ted Cruz about that, or anybody?
I have never talked to Ted Cruz about that. I've never talked to anybody about that. People put stuff on Twitter all the time. This is stuff from like House of Cards. That's not real life. Okay, I'm running for President of the United States. Ted Cruz is running for President of the United States. Everyone's still trying to get a majority of the delegates. I don't think Donald Trump will have the majority of the delegates unless he wins Florida and Ohio. And even there, he would struggle to get there. There are rules in place in the Republican Party to handle that, if and when it happens. But I've not discussed that with anybody. I'm focused on one thing right now, and that is winning the state of Florida, and then moving on in my campaign to pick up more delegates in other places.
So there are no discussions?
None, zero.
Because even what you all are talking about here, you feel so passionately about stopping him, about Israel and other issues.
And the best way to do it is to win an election here in Florida. That's the best way to do it. But I've not discussed, other than, I'm aware that some people on their blogs discuss these sorts of things, but there's no effort to do that. There's no discussion about doing that.
Open to it?
I've never discussed. No, I'm not open to it. Never talked about that with anybody. I'm open to one thing, and that's winning Florida on Tuesday, and going on from there to getting the delegates I need to be the nominee, or at least more delegates than anybody else.
At this point, even here in Florida, however, Trump is still leading, albeit by a slightly smaller margin now, in the polls. How much of a concern is that?
Yeah, how do we know that he's leading? Because of a poll? Look, polls were wrong in Virginia. Polls said I was losing by 20 points. I would have beat him had I had another 2 days of campaigning. So we're going to find out Tuesday. And bottom line is, I'm not concerned about polls. The only poll I'm concerned about is the one that can count on Tuesday. And by the way, voters in this election have shown a propensity to change their mind and to do so quickly. And I've said that when I've been up in polls, and I've said that when I've been down. I've been down in polls plenty of times in my life, and it's never affected us. We're going to continue to work hard. We're very confident about what's going to happen here in Florida on Tuesday.
How close do you believe the race is right now at this point in the state of Florida?
It'll be a close election. They always are, but we're going to win.
Any thoughts on the American? To a number of folks here in Florida who supported you for the Senate, but feel as though you didn't do the work that they felt as though you needed to do once you got there. Some of them are undecided. I'm wondering, what would you say to them now in order to get their support?
I've done everything I said I would do. I told everybody when I ran for the U.S. Senate that I was going up there to stand up to the Obama agenda and to offer a clear alternative, and I've done both. Not only have I stood up to the Obama agenda, But I've offered clear alternatives on foreign policy. I've offered clear alternatives on student loan debt. I've offered clear alternatives on human trafficking. I've offered clear alternatives on a number of issues. I've offered clear alternatives on the VA crisis and actually achieved results on that. So I did exactly what I said I was going to do, but the bottom line is I concluded about a year ago that the only way to reverse the policies of a bad president is to elect a good one. And I believe the best way for me to serve the country now is as President of the United States.
Then why do you think there is this perception then that
Well, if you,
out there you didn't do?
I don't think there is that perception. I think if you set out to write an article and you interview enough people, you'll eventually find someone to say whatever you want them to say. But I don't believe that that's a real perception.
Senator Rubio, you talk a lot about the importance of stopping Donald Trump at almost any cost. You and your campaign had the opportunity to go after him a lot earlier than you did. Do you think that was a mistake, and why did you not do that?
Well, you guys need to figure it out because when I go after him, you say, "Oh my gosh, he's gone so negative." When I don't go after him, you want to know why I didn't. Well, look, no, listen. Throughout this campaign, I'm not complaining. It's part of the process. But I took $40 million of attack ads run against me. At one point in this campaign, we were being attacked by 4 separate campaigns at the same time. So you have to deal with that at the same time. The bottom line is, once the race narrowed down, I'll continue to challenge Donald Trump, and I have in the past, and I'll continue to challenge him on the policy issues which he has no ideas about, and I'll continue to challenge him on what I believe is deceptive practices, both at Trump University and now in this campaign, where he portrays himself as something that he's not. He's done that to get people to sign up for Trump University, and he's trying to do that now to get people to vote for him. Again, this race has taken a lot of twists and turns, and I just invite you to go back 6 to 8 weeks at a time when I was being, confronted by multiple different candidates. We had to address that and get our message out. So, I mean, the dynamics of the race shift, and so do our strategy as a result. Sabrina.
You said that the conditions for a two-state solution do not exist today, but it has been the position of prior Republican administrations to still push for those negotiations. So are you ruling out, as president, even pursuing a
Yes,
two-state solution?
given the current conditions that exist, absolutely. Because two-state solutions involves the idea that there are 2 parties that are willing to agree to that, and there are not. I think Israel is willing to be incredibly accommodating, has proven that willingness to do so, have taken some extraordinary measures, including confronting people who have built homes and neighborhoods in order to move forward on some of these things. The Palestinian Authority has never shown any willingness. In fact, they've turned down some very generous offers in the past, flat out ignored them in others. And I just don't see right now the conditions for that, especially once they joined up with Hamas and an organization whose specific intent and purpose is the destruction of the Jewish state. The conditions just don't exist. And forcing Israel to a negotiating table that ultimately will lead to nothing but legitimizing an organization like the Palestinian Authority, who celebrates as martyrs and heroes people who are killing innocent people, including this young American who died in an attack this week, I think is actually counterproductive and undermines Israel's security.
Senator, what would be immediate policy changes with Israel? And also, do you have any thoughts on the American who was murdered by the Palestinian, and also any thoughts on the outbreak of stabbings that's been going on?
Well, I have thoughts about the American who was killed, and it's a tragic loss of life. And I place responsibility on the Palestinian Authority for inciting that violence and for celebrating it. And by the way, a lot of this violence that's occurring is because of rumors that they themselves have spread about Israeli efforts to take over the Temple Mount. I mean, they allow these rumors to fester. But what do you expect in a society where your leaders in school are teaching little children that killing Jews is glorious? Cartoons in the textbooks of these schools, the murder of Jews is celebrated as a heroic thing. So if you're teaching that to a 5-year-old, what do you expect they're going to do when they turn 15 or 20? So, and these are the people that Israel is supposed to negotiate a deal with? It's absurd. As far as policy changes, yeah, our full commitment to the world will be clear. On my first day in office, I will cancel Barack Obama's deal with Iran. I think that will send a very powerful message of whose side we're on in the Middle East. It isn't Iran, and it isn't that of those who threaten Israel's security.
Senator Rubio,
If the campaign does not end with you winning the nomination, is the door open to running for governor in Florida?
I'm running for President of the United States. I haven't even thought about what I'm having for lunch today, much less what I'm going to run for in 2 years or nothing at all. I'm focused on running for President of the United States. That is my focus. If I intend to win that nomination, although it will be a hard and grueling process, I'm prepared to do that. Is that Siri? I intend to run. I'm running for President of the United States. I intend to see this race through to the end. I intend to be the nominee. If that doesn't work out, I've told everybody very clearly, January of next year, I will either be the President of the United States or I will be a private citizen. And if I never hold elective office again, I'm comfortable with that. I can't tell you what's going to happen 2 to 4 years from now, but I have no plans, no thoughts, no contemplation, no meetings, nothing about any future political run of any sort. I'm sorry, what?
You have concluded that you would not pursue another political.
I mean,
Florida.
I haven't concluded anything. I haven't concluded anything. I haven't even thought about, I'm running for president of the United States. I'm in the middle of a campaign for president right now. I haven't thought about anything beyond Tuesday and what happens the rest of this campaign. But it's just not something I'm thinking about or in any way contemplating. Let me go this side, then I'll come, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Donald Trump says that if whoever has the most delegates at the end of this process, even if it's not a majority, that person should be nominated. Do you agree with that?
That's not what the rules of the Republican Party say. The rules of the Republican Party are very clear. It contemplates this. We'll get there when we get there. We'll see how this all plays out. Right now, you guys can continue to focus on that, but I'm going to focus on Tuesday and winning Florida, and we'll go from there and see how it plays out.
Senator, when you're willing to serve as president, Senator? Attack ads coming out in Florida. Why do you think it's taken this long for there to be those attack ads against?
You'll have to ask the people running them.
Do you think it has anything to do with Jeb Bush's reluctance to end his campaign earlier?
No, you'll have to ask, honestly, all those, they're not being run by my campaign, so they're being run by independent groups who I'm legally prohibited from speaking to or encouraging to do anything. So I just can't comment on that. I really can't.
Senator, at last night's debate, you said that the climate is always changing and that no one policy can affect that.
That's correct.
What experts have you consulted that led you to that conclusion?
Both economists and environmental people that have come to see me, the advocates of these very bills. Every time someone comes to see me and asks me to support one of these policies, I always ask them, well, can you tell me how many inches or feet of sea rise will it prevent? And their answer is, well, it won't, but it'll set an example, and if the rest of the world does it, in 150 years we can reach this point. And then you ask economists, and it's pretty clear that the cost of following these policies will be borne on the American consumer, on the American business. So I think a better approach is, number one, to invest in mitigation activity to deal with these changes. And the second is to continue to allow the American innovator to drive us into a direction where we're producing less carbon, not because of government mandates, but because we've become more efficient in the use of biofuels, renewables, energy efficiency, wind, solar, and by the way, also fully utilizing natural gas, which is a clean source.
Senator Rubio. Regarding Venezuela, Venezuela's allies are Iran, Russia.
Do you want it in Spanish or English?
Spanish would be beautiful.
Okay.
So, regarding your foreign policy in regards to Venezuela, Venezuela having its allies as Iran and Russia as well.
Well, Venezuela is a disaster. I mean, it's run by someone who's incompetent and happens to also be a Chavista socialist in an economic model that doesn't work. They've basically stolen the treasure of that country, given it away to allies around, to their allies like Cuba around the world, but have now run that economy into the ground. As far as the relationship with Iran and Russia and so forth, yeah, there's a link between Venezuela and Iran. Again, I mean, I think that people with these mindsets, totalitarian type leaders, kind of flock together. And I think you've seen that evidence in the relationship between Venezuela, Russia, and Iran. En términos de Venezuela, el líder de Venezuela es incompetente. Es un individuo que no solamente es un chavista y un socialista, es incompetente. Y han llevado a la quiebra a un país, el país más rico de América Latina, con recursos, enormes recursos de petróleo y una población muy bien educada y muy productiva, y lo han llevado a la quiebra. La economía venezolana hoy es un desastre bajo este liderazgo. Y también es un sistema de gobierno más como dictadura que democracia. Estamos viendo cómo ha utilizado los tribunales para prevenir que las elecciones y los resultados de estas elecciones se respeten en Venezuela. Y en términos de sus enlaces entre Irán y Venezuela, Rusia y Venezuela, eso es obvio. Y la razón es porque dictadores y personas que no creen en democracia se unen en causa muchas veces, y obviamente eso es lo que está ocurriendo en Venezuela.
¿Y su postura ante Israel en español, muy cortito?
Mi postura sobre Israel es que estamos 100% de parte de Israel. Israel es un país muy especial, es la tierra que existe para darle albergue al pueblo judío después que sufrieron tanto durante el Holocausto, y también es el aliado más importante que tienen los Estados Unidos en el Medio Oriente. Se ven amenazados hoy por todas partes, y cada vez que los Estados Unidos crean separación entre los Estados Unidos e Israel, pone en peligro y amenaza el futuro de Israel. Así que yo como presidente seré 100% en el lado de Israel.
Senator, you say a deal is not possible because there aren't two equal parties, but what makes you think that you as president can improve the situation in the Middle East and improve the situation for Israel when so many past leaders, not just President Obama, have struggled for so long to accomplish?
Well, I think they've struggled because they've tried to force a deal that isn't possible. I'm telling you, we're going to improve Israel's security in the Middle East. Whether it will make the rest of the region better is another matter. But when it comes to Israel, my number one concern is Israel's security and Israel's ability to continue to survive and prosper as a Jewish state. And I'm fully and 100% committed to that. I know that when the United States creates any daylight between us and Israel, it emboldens Israel's enemies to take action and be more aggressive against Israel. I can tell you that we'll continue to support policies like the ones I've already passed, additional sanctions against Hezbollah, a radical Shia group under the complete control of Tehran, who uses its standing in Lebanon to launch attacks whenever possible against Israel and its interests. And so I can tell you that I'm fully committed to Israel's security and Israel's prosperity and our alliance with Israel. And hopefully, at some point in our lifetime, we will see improved conditions that will allow for a negotiated deal. But right now, those conditions simply don't exist.
So you will not pursue, in the beginning, in any way, any sort of peace deal or agreement?
I will not force Israel into any negotiation. If in fact conditions change and Israel feels emboldened and prepared to pursue them, I'll be supportive of that effort. But I will not force them to a negotiating table the way the Obama administration has tried to do. And in that light, let me just say, the more secure Israel feels about our relationship and the more secure Israel feels about its security, the more willing they have been in the past.
Senator Marco Rubio talking to a crowd in West Palm Beach at Temple Beth today, trying to very clearly distinguish his campaign from that of Donald Trump, of course, the front runner right now. One thing he really hammered over and over again as from a national security standpoint, really, that Israel is pro-America for free enterprise democracy in the Middle East, and that partnership has to continue in order, he says, for the U.S. to continue to be successful.
Right. The senator sounding laser focused both in English, and then you heard him speaking in Spanish there, though a lot of folks probably didn't understand exactly what he was saying. He repeated it in English, basically the same thing that he was saying before. He shows no sign of quitting, and at one point we heard him say, when I'm president. Again, laser focused on this, so he's not thinking ahead to what might happen, what might not happen. He doesn't believe that Donald Trump is the man, but you would expect him to say that. He says he's not ready for the problems that face the world these days, and he hopes that the voters understand that. So he's trying to score some big points here, perhaps his last big opportunity ahead of the Florida primary next Tuesday.
I think he does know it's do or die time. Tuesday, very, very important for him to win Florida, but he did address head on, either I'm going to be the president or I will be a private citizen. He has no plans or laid out plans other than that. He wants to win Florida Tuesday, he said that, but that right now is his main focus. We will continue to follow Senator Marco Rubio throughout the day. You can watch it on the app. You can read about it on the app on WPTV.com, and at 4 o'clock also on the Now, beginning then. We now want to join our regularly scheduled programming, Rachel Ray. Thank you so much for joining us for Today on 5 at 11.